On this episode of Simply Offensive, I'm joined by Len Noe. Len Noe is a transhuman and the first augmented ethical hacker. We discuss Len's documentary and his book. This is not your typical ethical hacker story, and he kind of really pushes the boundaries of hacking. Hacking basically come from the original term was expanding the capabilities of things, in creating different types of gadgets and things. And so this kind of really, his story really emphasizes the true meaning of a hacker along with the more commonly known terminology. Hello and welcome to another episode of Simply Offensive. Today I'm joined by my good friend Len Noe. If you've been to conferences, probably more likely have seen Len. He's got a very interesting story. Of course, he's an ethical hacker, but some of the things he does is just even unusual when it comes to ethical hackers. Although ethical hackers can be not your norm, but he kind of goes beyond that. And so he's got a really interesting story to tell. So welcome to the show, Len.
Hey, Philip, it's always great to see you, man. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so really happy to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. Great to have you on. So before we get started, why don't you share a little bit about yourself for those that may not know who you are?
Okay. My name is Len Noe. I am a divergent research engineer with CW PennSec. And before that, I came by my chops by way of college. I wish I could have said I took that, long, hard road through, some Ivy League academic, but I just decided it would be a lot easier and faster to go to the criminal route. So my history is as an actual black hat, former one percenter motorcycle club member who decided to turn his life around about 13 years ago and realized I was really only kind of good at, trying to get into fights and, breaking into computers. And then I met somebody like Phil here who, well, once wrestled a bear in one. And I realized I'm not fighting anymore. So I need to figure out a better use of my skills. So I am also most well known for being the first recognized augmented ethical hacker. And by augmented, I mean I have currently 11 different microchips that I have surgically implanted in my arms and my hands for the purposes of offensive security as well as enhancing my own personal security. So am the actual collision point between human identity and machine identity. This is what happens once those two things actually collide, and I am what comes next.
Very cool. So yes, so it's kind of cool that they're both kind of related, but why don't you start out telling us about your book?
So my book was released back in late 2023, and it's called Human Hacked: My Life and Lessons as the World's First Augmented Ethical Hacker. The book was actually, it kind of came by way of a fluke. And, this is a real big shout out to my publishers over at Wylie Press, especially my editors. God bless them, because I failed comp and lit in high school. And, you know, I, I I had been doing presentations on the biohacker concept since early 2020. I had given this presentation multiple times around the world, and my podcast host partner Justin Hutchins had just released his book, Language of Deception, through Wiley, and I had just made an off-comment statement to him that I was like, I had been thinking about trying to write a book and just basically give the biohacker presentation that I was giving when I was out doing these conferences, put it down on paper. I figured that's what it would be. So when I pitched, he was like, well, let me introduce you to my publicist, Jim Mintel, shout out to Jim. And, when I first pitched the idea, it was kind of funny because he was like, I'm not really sure what to make of you. You did what? You put implant in your hand, like surgery. He just couldn't really wrap his head around it. And he's like, all right, well, I'll take this back and we'll let you know. And I get a call back like the next day, and they're like, oh yeah, we want you to write this book. But the thing is, it's not so much what, your presentation. We want to know what makes someone want to do something this crazy. So it wound up being this really strange, almost autobiographical, buildup of what would it take somebody to wake up one morning and go, I've always wondered what it would feel like to be able to just smack my phone like Fonzie from Happy Days and have it do something. I think I'm going to find out. I mean, it takes a really special kind of person, like you alluded to in your opening monologue, and I appreciate the way you put that. I'm could do I was a black hat for many years, but it wasn't until I actually started doing the implanted technology that people started looking at me as something different than everybody else. And the thing is, I'm just one, potentially hundreds of thousands of people walking the earth right now with these same types of capabilities. And the only reason anybody's paying any attention to me is because I decided to show them that this is not just a gimmick and it's not just a bar trick. These types of devices have real world implications for both positive and negative. And if we really want to take security, especially from a digital perspective, at its face value, then we need to implement controls for people like myself. And at least, I'm the magician that's showing you the trick. So now I know for a fact that there are certain governments and quite a few large corporations that, after they have witnessed my presentations and talked with me, I know that they've added additional controls for individuals with these types of capabilities because they do see this as what is going to probably be one of the next attack vectors that's going to start coming out, is more of the integration of the technical and the biological.
Yeah, that's pretty wild because you think about some locations, the level of security, because there's been places. There was a consulting company I interviewed with back still, yeah, it's early on in my security career, and you went into the building, you didn't get to take your cell phone with you. You had to check
Mhm.
your cell phone, so I can see where something like that could be a workaround for, potential threat actors.
Absolutely. And that's just with, what's commercially available right now. I mean, I've been telling everybody I'm one of the brand ambassadors for dangerousthings.com. And that's where, up until this point, all of my hardware has come from. But let me show you this, Phil. This is actually a prototype that, they're working on over at Dangerous Things. And I'll take it out here real quick and get you a better picture of this just so you can actually get a better perspective on size. So this is about maybe an inch and a quarter. You can see it's very, very. It's not microscopically thin, but it's relatively thin.
Okay.
Want to take a wild guess what this is?
No idea.
This is an implantable 1 terabyte hard drive.
Oh, wow.
This is like straight up Johnny mnemonic stuff. So up until this point, I'm just currently playing around. At least with my current implants, I'm just playing in the wireless bands. In the high low frequencies. But there's new things on the horizon that are going to take that into an entirely different digital plane. And you're talking about lockdown areas. Imagine what somebody how uh, eh, you can't even air gap systems at this point. At that point, if you have somebody like me that can put a terabyte in my arm, your air gap systems are no longer even safe anymore. We need to be aware whether there's I don't think it's going to be a one step mitigation. It's not like you can just have, mobile x rays everywhere. You walk through the hallway and, okay, we're not at that point, but, there is, additional controls that you can put in place. And people need to realize that, yeah, I may be fringe today, but I honestly believe that there's going to come a time where when people are going to look back and go, when did all this, cyborg mutant stuff start? And there's going to be a Wikipedia page made about me someday, I figure.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And you think of all the different things coming out, like the different technologies. I can't think of it. The brain implant to help people
Oh,
that
yeah.
with certain disabilities. You figure when you get that type of stuff together and pair it up with the type of technology you're using, someone can just think and do whatever without that way they don't look suspicious. Someone's on a keyboard, or even maybe if you
Hmm.
control the device through your phone or some other external device, you don't look suspicious because you could just think the commands and execute the commands.
Absolutely. And we're not that far off from that. I mean, with current brain computer interfaces, I mean, we're still limited into basic mouse or cursor movements of up, down, left, right, clicks, double clicks, but it's all being done by thought. And you got to remember, this is what I would call the second generation of brain computers integrations. The original BCIs were actually called BCMs, and they were called brain computer machines, and they've been around since the 70s, in very simplistic forms. But if you just look at the way that we've been able to map the human genome. We've been able to start, let's play cut and paste with our own genetic matrices through the use of CRISPR technologies. We've got stem cell research that we've proven that by injecting specifically treated stem cells into a kidney, it'll secrete three separate enzymes that, when combined, will actually take on the characteristics of insulin. So we're unlocking so much. The idea that we won't be able to figure this out just doesn't, it's going to happen soon.
Yeah. Well, it takes people like yourself that's doing this to bring up the interest to get more people interested in it, because if it wasn't for you, a lot of us in the cybersecurity community wouldn't even know about this. So it's just like whenever AI was introduced to the cybersecurity community. Before that, no one was really doing anything security wise. People weren't hacking it, figuring out how to use it to hack. And then once you get technology capabilities in the right hands, it's amazing what the creativity creates out of that technology.
I just wish that there were more of us, that were looking at it from the perspectives of how can these new tools better secure and enrich the lives of everybody, instead of seeing how can we turn these things into the next nuclear weapon of the digital age.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the terrible that we have people out there that think like that. But one of the things I was kind of curious about before, uh, a few days ago, maybe a week ago, but I was thinking about the whole implant thing. And I
Hmm.
was thinking about this isn't as drastic, but I was just thinking, just think what someone could seal that has some type of prosthetic. So if you had a prosthetic leg,
Oh, yeah.
from the hip down, you could put a nook
I have
within it.
a very, very dear, dear, dear friend of mine. His name is Rooster. He was actually injured in an explosion and lost most of his forearm. And he's a little geek like we are. So he's already talking about how, he's working on this new prosthetic, and he's actually got, he's trying to 3D print the whole thing. And he's like, all right, I've got an ESP3266 that I'm going to put right here. This is where I'm going to just have my Flipper Zero, implanted right here. I can put a Wi-Fi pineapple portable back here. I can put the battery pack. He's built like, a Terminator hacker prosthetic arm. And when this is done, I will make sure to get you pictures of it so you can post this as a follow up to this episode. But no, he's already working on that. And even with prosthetics in general, I mean, we're talking about tricking one out as a potential offensive security tool. But, there's also the fact that, even with actual prosthetic enhancements that we're seeing now through advanced sensor technology, prosthetics and people who have amputated limbs are now actually getting tactile sensation back through the nerve endings in the stumps. So one of the things that, I've always looked at, especially when it comes to body augmentation, is we're limited to what we can actually kind of slip under the skin. There's always been the concept of body dysmorphia, and I'm being very cautious because there are people that suffer from these types of disorders. I'm not personally one of them, but what if I was to walk into my doctor's office and say, hey doc, I'd like you to amputate my arm from here down because I want to get a robotic prosthetic here, they would say, Len, we need you to go see the counselor. And I think one of the reasons that it's always been that way is we've never been at a point where any of the aftermarket parts were superior to the biological originals. I think we're on the precipice, especially now that, if I can still tell if something's hot and cold, but I can also, get like, a 5,000 foot-pound grip along with, shiny titanium alloy and blue racing stripes, and it's better than the original. I wonder how that's gonna push the needle of acceptability from a social perspective.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought there. At least one of the things, and wouldn't say maybe worth getting your limbs replaced, but if you think about the fact that you could just feel hot or cold, if there's pain to it, if you got a sensor to let you know that it's causing damage or injury, you don't have to actually feel the pain.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's like we're unlocking so much new technology, and I'm honestly I'm on the fence when it comes to just projecting quantum, because I'll be freely admit, I don't know about you, but I haven't had a real chance to play with a quantum computer yet. I know what the hype is, but you know, uh, to think of what we can do especially with that type of computational power. I'm hoping that someday there is that, that cyberpunk shop where you're like, you know what? I've been saving up for a new eyeball that has 4K. I'm hoping for that future, man. I know I'm the weird one, but I am.
Yeah, can't I kinda could see that eventually happening because you look at a lot of these sci-fi movies and that stuff usually comes to fruition, so it wouldn't surprise me, who knows how long it'd be, but it wouldn't surprise me when those things come about.
Yeah, maybe someday they'll have, like, I don't know, the the memorial, the Len Noe garage door opener finger. I'll have my own branded finger being the original guy. Want to open your garage? Just point at it like Len.
So, yes,
But
kinda building on that subject, you've got a documentary, kind of, based off your life in the book, if you wouldn't mind kinda, discussing that.
yeah, my documentary, I Am Machine. Oh, that's that's an interesting story. That was not even my real idea. The idea that somebody would want to actually do a movie about me kind of took me a while to really get. So I believe you were there. You were at the Barcode event, 2 years ago, weren't you? So yeah. So 2 years ago, we're at the Barcode event in Las Vegas, and a mutual old friend of ours, Chris Glandon from Barcode Security, was debuting his first film that he had done, I Am Human or Inhuman. I
Yeah,
Am Machine. He was Inhuman. Okay,
yeah.
got that wrong. Sorry. But he was showing his first independent film, and we were having a good time. And it was a good film. Afterwards, we're all having a good time, imbibing in the official Barcode drink, the bottle cap. Hint, hint. Remember, next year in Vegas, order the bottle cap. It is the signature drink for the Barcode events there. But we were talking, and Chris is like, so he did the typical usual thing when somebody really gets to know me, and they're like, you really had surgery 10 times. I want to do a movie about you. And I'm thinking, okay, Chris, you've been drinking since 6 o'clock this afternoon. It is now midnight. I'm going to see if you still want to do a movie on me tomorrow. Good to see you, pal. Take care. Never honestly expected to hear from him again. I really, really didn't. I was like, he is so drunk, he is not even going to remember the second half of this evening. I honestly really screwed up by misrepresenting or misjudging the amount of alcohol that Chris Glandon can imbibe and still maintain, his personal, cinematographic mind. So a couple of days later, he calls me up. He's like, "So about that movie?" I'm like, "You're serious? You want to do this?" And it was really kind of, it was one of the more vulnerable things I think I've honestly ever done, if you want to know the truth, Philip. Because, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff now, but it was a lot easier to kind of allude to, how much of a screw up I was in my book, because, you're not going to dedicate a whole chapter to, let me point out all the ways that I did everything the wrong way. You can just be like, yes, I spent some time in the motorcycle clubs and moved on from that part of my life. And now I'm working at this as a security guy, and I'm really part of society. And, go white hats. Yay. Yeah, you can do that in a book. But, the way I see it, in order for me to come out of this, looking the way that, I am now, I had to own the fact that I had to be a real jerk and go through a lot of bad stuff in order to get to that point. So, it was really difficult. Chris is a very hardcore filmmaker, and, the questions and the situations were just, they were not what like I said in the beginning, it was kind of like when I was talking to the publicist over at Wiley. Yeah, I'd like to just make a book where I'm just going to kind of put down in writing my presentation about what I do. No, dude, you're the story. And when you're the story, you can either go one way and try and put on this face, but I figure if I want people to take me seriously, then I had to be real about it. And then we brought in my dad. Oh wow. My dad stole the entire movie with he had some really, beautiful things to say about my mother who has passed on. But I'll tell you what, the editing room floor, I'm so grateful to our editor, Kevin Pentecost, because the amount of editing he had to do. I mean, true story, Phil. So they're trying to get my dad to talk about, the big picture. So the question was something like, so how do you think history will look back on Len's contribution to, cybersecurity and maybe humanity as an overall? And my dad's response, and I'm not going to quote him, but it was something along the lines of, I don't think history will even know who he was. As far as people remembering him, I mean, I think anybody that wants to follow in what he's doing is crazy. So that, I love you, Dad, but it's like lots of support from the home front. But it was really, on a personal level, it was some of the best footage that myself and my brothers actually have of my father. So I mean, I really much love to the guys for they clipped out all the extra footage and sent it, so we have that for prosperity, and I love them both for it. But it was just really an interesting experience. I mean, as somebody that does, presentations and interviews, we both run the circuit, you know how to be on this side of the camera. But it's usually we're talking about, a topic like, oh, have you heard about the new Kerberos? What happened with CrowdStrike? Oh my goodness. What happened over there? Bitcoin, hey, AI. Yeah. But we're talking on a concept, or we're talking on a topic. It's not like, you and I are sitting here talking about, stories of, what helped founding, or found our basis in reality and helped shape us into the people that we are. And to do that kind of a film, I really had to make that decision, and it it it's never easy for me to sit and watch people watching that movie, if that makes sense. I did for a while when we did the premiere in Las Vegas, and I remember just sitting there in the back going, this is just like the most surreal thing in the world. I'm watching people watching me. And gotta love Mel, our MC. He was like, you want to go sit in the back? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's just go sit in the back. Y- and everybody wants me. I have no problem. I'll come up and I'll introduce the movie. But you know what? After that, y'all enjoy. I'll come back when it's over.
Yeah, it was
Although
pretty awesome.
I will say one thing: the scene where we do the implant. If I will try and sneak in there just when they're going to do that one scene where they're going to stick me with the needle, just so I can try and see the crowd reaction, because that's just funny.
Yeah, it was a pretty awesome documentary.
It was a real labor of love between some really dedicated people, and they made my story something that I think is much more palatable to people, and I think it also gives them a little bit more of an understanding, and that does help me on a personal level, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most, how do I put this? There are some who may say that I have an intimidating appearance. I don't think so. I think I'm a nice guy, but that's not to say that, I have not been called out on extremist websites. And there are some people that are afraid of me just because I exist. And that's something else that I'm hoping that this movie will do, is kind of let people realize, that, I'm still a normal dude. And I didn't need the implants. If I really wanted to get into your phone, I could have done it without it.
Very cool. So I know that you've been receiving invitations to awards and getting awards for your documentary. If you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing a little details about that.
Absolutely. So far, we have been selected for 3 separate film festivals. We've made the official selection for the Filmmaker Sessions Volume 10. We made the official selection for the Documentaries Without Borders. And give me just a second for the last one here. We just got this one, and I haven't updated the website yet, but I will be doing so probably tomorrow. We were selected for the Los Angeles Movie and Music Video Awards Festival 2025 so far. And we actually have, I believe, 6 more festivals that we'll be getting notified on before the end of December. Which also, if I may, if you guys are going to be in the Texas North or South area and are looking for an opportunity to try and get a chance to see I Am Machine, there are going to be 2 showings in Texas over the course of the next month and a half. So to that point, I'm pulling up my calendar right now so I can get you guys the exact dates. You're hearing it here on Phil's show. So that's going to be, one second, that's this month, next month. Okay. So in December, it's the CyberSecCon on December 17th is putting out a screening of I Am Machine down in the Houston area. there isn't a Eventbrite page, I'm sure we can probably get Phil to let you know what that is.
Yeah, we could put that in the show notes.
Also, I believe it's is going to be, if you're looking up north, on January 18th, the Lone Star Cyber Circus in Dallas. Check out the Circus Network's website for Eventbrite details and location. So we will be showing it in both locations, and I'm working on trying to just center out the state and get something here in Austin. I just haven't had a chance to lock it down just yet, and we've got a heck of a lot of holidays coming up, but I will be doing a screening here in Central Texas as well. And I'm also, for anyone that's curious, I'm working on getting one back in my hometown of Detroit. So all of my Detroiters, I am bringing it home. It's just taking me a little time to get it all the details worked out, but there will be a screening in Detroit. Promise.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Are there any closing comments you have?
Absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here. Just because somebody is different doesn't necessarily mean that we're all wrong. It does mean we're all a little bit crazy, because you do have to be a little bit off your rocker to want to do this kind of thing. But, just remember, all these individuals out there that are looking to get that new sleep apnea implant, they're no different than me. I may not have a medical condition, but I wanted to have more interaction with technology in my life and enhance my life. You could have a CPAP. There's already a solution that doesn't require an implant. So before we start casting microchips, don't cast them. Don't cast microchips at glass houses. You can quote me on that. Thank you so
Very
much for
cool.
having me, Phil. I
Yeah,
really
thanks.
enjoyed being here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on. And also, too, I'll have an episode coming out of the Phillip Wylie show featuring Chris Glandon, the person that did the documentary. So if people want to learn more about Chris, that episode's coming out, and we discuss the documentary in that episode as well. So thanks again for joining, and thanks everyone for joining. Please subscribe and share with your friends. And until next time, take care.